Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Flash Forward. This week, we're continuing talking about the Flash, specifically an event called Race Against Time, which it's not a crossover event like the previous one was, like Dead Heat. It's within the Flash title only. It covers issues 112 to 118. So, 112 and 118 kind of serve as like the prologue and the epilogue to the event, and issues 113 through 117 are the event itself, which is why I'm covering all of them. And then we're also going to be covering Annual 9 today, and that should leave us off right where Final Night begins. Yeah, and so next week I'll do Final Night. This week we're doing Race Against Time. Before we get into this event, if you're watching on YouTube, then please subscribe and like the video. And if you're listening on Spotify, then follow the Spotify podcast, and like it and review it. So last week when we covered the Flash, the last issue that we did ended with Wally going missing again, because it happens quite often, and John Fox is in his place in the regular timeline. Now, John Fox is a Flash of the future introduced in Flash Special 1, which we covered in an earlier episode of the podcast. If you want to listen to that, then you can go back and listen to that episode. It should be on YouTube and Spotify. I've named them specifically after their stuff, so just find the episode that says Flash Special 1 in the title, and that will be the one that you're looking for. I'm pretty sure I even there's chapters as well, so you can get to the part of the video that you're looking for. So yeah, John Fox is in the present now. He's taken Wally's place in time, and so yeah, that's where we currently are. It's written by Mark Waid with art by Anthony Castrillo and Hannibal Rodriguez. So yeah, this is 112. So this issue begins with John Fox and Linda. It begins with Chillblain has Linda held hostage, because Chillblain's back, except it's a different guy. Because Chillblain is this character where it's a different guy every time, and he's kind of a joke villain. Only this time, this Chillblain states that he's serious, and Linda has to reiterate to us that he does seem serious because there's something in his eye that's different to the other Chillblains. What that is, we don't find that out in this issue. I'm guessing it's going to be something that is developed later on. So John Fox saves the hostages from Chillblain, and including Linda. And so they head back to Linda and Wally's apartment, and Linda's like, "Oh, John, you got a new costume." And John's like, "Yep, after I came through the time stream and ended up here, my old costume got torn up, so I made a new one." And he also explains to Linda exactly how he knows Wally, because he knows Wally, but only kind of, because they teamed up together to help defeat this guy named Mota, who is this villain who had appeared throughout time. He didn't travel through time, he just got older and older and fought every single Flash until he eventually became this big lava monster thing in the future. And the Flashes all helped each other defeat it, and defeat Mota. And so yeah, that's the origin of John Fox. He got his powers and became the Flash of the future. So Linda is obviously worried about Wally's well-being, and Pied Piper is kind of not sure on John. He doesn't really trust him, while Linda kind of trusts him a little bit too soon, and I feel like it's partly because she misses Wally and she's kind of replacing Wally with this other Flash for the meantime, somebody else that can look out for her. And John doesn't really, it seems like he's hiding things about Wally. It's he knows where Wally is, but he kind of refuses to say anything. And he makes Linda think that Wally's not coming back because he doesn't answer her when she asks him, is Wally coming back? And so she starts getting worried. And Piper is like, John, like, stop talking because all you're doing is you're making Linda worry, you know. And so they instead, in order to get Linda's mind off of Wally, decide to continue hunting down Chilblain. And then hopefully Wally will come back while they're doing that. That's what they're hoping. They're hoping that Wally's just going to make his way back. Because he always does. He always makes his way back to her. So John decides to head off to Johnny Quick's funeral, which is currently being held at the time. Johnny Quick was killed by Savitar in the end of the last event. At the end of Dead Heat. He ran so fast that he ran into the Speed Force and became one more vet, and he died. So they're having his funeral, and the Justice Society of America are said to be there. It is the Justice Society, yeah. So the Justice Society is said to be there, but we don't actually see them because maybe Mark Waid didn't have the rights to like include them in the comic, where the editors were like, you know, you can't put them in the comic because they're busy doing stuff, but you can just say that they're there. We do get to see one member, though, and her name is... her superhero name is the Liberty Bell. Her real name, we don't know. They don't actually say her real name. But she's the mother of Jesse Quick and the wife of Johnny Quick, and so she's there, and she's basically just like, I told Johnny that this kind of life was going to kill him, and I was right. So, yeah, it's sad that he's dead, but I warned him. She's kind of like, she's very cold about it. And then she leaves, and Jesse's trying to talk to her. She's like, Mom, like, don't do this now. Like, come on. I know we've had our differences, but, like, her mom is just like, Jesse, don't end up like your father. And she like gets into her limousine and heads off, and John comes up from behind Jesse and says, look, Jesse, your father's going to be remembered in the future. And Jesse is like, thank you, John, thanks for letting me know that. Then he goes up to Jay, and Jay's like, is what you said true about Johnny? And John's just like, does it really matter? And Jay's like, I guess it doesn't. And then John heads over to Jenny, aka XS, who comes from the future, and she wants to head back to the future because Bart has made a life in the 20th century, but she hasn't. She doesn't want to. She wants to head home. So she asks John if he can help her get home, and John says that there should be a cosmic treadmill at the Flash Museum. So Jenny and Jay go there to uncover it. Jay uncovers the cosmic treadmill for her, and then John uses his technical know-how to configure the cosmic treadmill so that it can send people through time without having to run on it, because Jenny can't run fast enough to use it. Because you have to be able to run as fast as Barry Allen could back in the day, and Jenny can't do that. So, yeah, he sets it up, and she goes on it, and then she heads back to the future. Like, this issue is kind of just to clean up some of the stuff that happened at the end of the last issue, you know, like Johnny Quick's death, Jenny being sent back to the future. And so after that, John decides that, like, he hears that Chilblain is back, he has more hostages, and so he heads off with Piper. Oh, wait, no, not Piper. He just heads off with, like, a pastor to go and save these people. Or is it Piper? Is it Pied Piper? It might be Pied Piper. It's a guy with, like, orange hair. I think it is Piper. So they head to find Chilblain. He's just wearing a different costume, I guess. They head to find Chilblain, and they find him, and the entire room has, like, icicles on the ceiling. So if they make any noise, the icicles will fall down and kill everyone. And a guy sneezes. Like, one of the hostages sneezes, and then this Chilblain is like, Gesundheit. And then all the icicles start falling, and John's like, alright, quick, we gotta get everyone out of here, let's go, get out. And he starts grabbing everyone and pulling them out of the building and saving them all. And as he makes his way out, he actually ends up, like, slipping on some ice, and he crashes into a cop car, badly bruising his ribcage. And then Chilblain gets away, And John is like, I gotta go after him. And Piper is like, whoa, John, calm down. Like, as soon as, like, by the time you get your wind back, he's gonna be long gone anyway. What matters is that you saved all these people. You should be happy about that. And he's like, I should, shouldn't I? And then John heads home, and when he heads home, he just freaks out and destroys everything in his room. He's just like, destroys everything. And then Linda's like, John, what's going on? Is everything all right in there? And John opens the door, and he's like, sorry, just broke a chair. And she's like, I was concerned about you. And he's like, me? All right, come in. And Linda takes a look at his rib cages and is like, how does this feel? And is like touching his like chest, like his rib area. And he's like, it hurts a little bit, but like it's okay. And they kind of start joking around with each other. And John's like, did you enjoy seeing me slip over like an idiot and dance around like a chicken and make this memorable face? And he like pulls a weird face, and she's laughing. And then Linda says that she's figured out that there's a direct chain between Chillblain and someone known as the Golden Glider. So if they track down this Golden Glider, they'll probably find Chillblain. And, you know, and then John says, like, wow, you're really astounding. Like, you found all this stuff? And Linda's like, nah, just a hard worker. Sleep well. We'll roll this fug over big once Wally gets back. And then that kind of, like, peeves John off. She's like, John, what's wrong? He's like, Linda, I should have told you before. And that's when Linda assumes that Wally's not coming back. She's just like, oh, he's not coming back, is he? Wally's not coming back, oh my god. And then she like hugs John. She's like, no, he's not coming back, is it true? Tell me, is it true? And John's like thinking to himself, it is now. So now he's going to lie to Linda and tell her that Wally's not coming back because obviously he's falling in love with Linda and he wants to be with her. And so he's just going to pretend that Wally is, like, he's going to try and do what he can to keep Wally from coming back. That's what's probably going to happen. And meanwhile, Wally wakes up on solid ground. He's like, I'm awake. Awesome. All right, where am I? And then he gets up and he realizes that he's not in the present. He's in somewhere else. And there are a bunch of flash symbols all over the buildings in this place that he is. It's very clear that he's probably in the future that John Fox came from. And we're left on this cliffhanger of Wally being like, where am I? And that's it. That's the end of the issue. And so next we're going to be talking about Flash issue 113, where we find out where Wally is and whether or not he can get back to his own time. Alright, issue 113, with art by Oscar Jimenez, added to it with Jose Marzan. It's still got art by Anthony Castrillo and Hanamel Rodriguez as well. They kind of are working together to make this one issue, written by Mark Waid. So at the end of the last issue, Wally ended up in the 64th century, and in this issue, he's still in the 64th century, and he discovers that everyone in the 64th century worshipped him like a god. Because at the end of a previous arc, where Wally went to the future, and Abracadabra was there, and he teamed up with Abracadabra to take down this giant clock that was controlling everyone in the future and making them all do the same thing. He destroyed that and gave everyone free will, and because of that, they started worshipping him like a god, to the point where they wear clothes inspired by him, the buildings are inspired by him, and he is their prodigy. There's statues of him and everything. And so they bring Wally into a throne room, and they're like washing his feet, and Wally's just like, hey, what are you doing? Oh, this is actually really nice. And Wally meets this guy named Keeley, who is kind of like his right-hand man. And, you know, a bunch of people are coming in asking Wally questions because he's supposed to be leading them. He's like, we don't have a name for our council. Can you come up with one? He's like, oh, just call them the ESO. And she's like, all right, yeah, we'll call them that. And it's like, no, that was a joke. I didn't mean to actually call them that. And they just don't understand his sense of humor. And so Wally asks Keely to show him around the city so that he can see what's up. And Wally is like, how long has this been built like this? And Keely explains to him that it's been 5 years since Wally had come and saved them. So Wally's like, wow, all of this in 5 years? That's insane. And then they see a local police officer grab a guy, and he's like, this man is, a blasphemer. He's saying that you're not the real Flash, and that's blasphemy. And Wally's like, hey, don't go that far. For all you know, I am a fake in a costume. And then a little kid falls from a bridge, and Wally saves him with his speed powers and is like, okay, I guess I'm not a fake. And then he realizes that after saving this kid, everyone is bowing down to him. And Wally's like, okay, this is weird. This is getting too weird for me. I don't like the fact that people are worshipping me like this. And then Keely is like, now come, Wally, I must show you the true, the true grand design of our city. Our true purpose. The Speed Tower. With this tower, we plan on trying to connect to the Speed Force so we can learn of its secrets. Because it brought you to us. And Wally puts 2 and 2 together and he's like, alright, so this tower is actually connected to the Speed Force because I can feel it because I'm connected to the Speed Force. It's probably the reason I ended up here when I was in the Speed Force. I took a left turn, the tower brought me here. Maybe the tower will be able to send me back. Meanwhile, Linda hasn't eaten in 3 days. She's so worried about Wally, and John comes in and he's like, I'm sorry that you had to find out this way, but you can't be locked up in your room not eating anything. Why don't you come and help me take down Chilblain? We'll go and find this golden glider together and figure out where Chilblain is. And Linda's like, yeah, of course. I'd be happy to. This is what I want to do. I wanna find Chilblain. And so John goes through all of Linda's notes, and they figure out that. So in the previous issues, if you've listened to previous episodes, you would know that Golden Glider and Captain Cold started a mercenary business together called the Golden Snowball, where they would just take on odd jobs for people, as hero work. And Mark Waid came along and he did Underworld Unleashed, and he just killed off Captain Cold for no reason, really. He just killed him off, which is frustrating. And I said back then that he made no reference to the mercenary business. He does in this. He casually mentions that, it lasted a week. Which is kind of dumb. I don't like this. I don't like this kind of retconning. And there's something else that happens later on with Golden Glider that also upsets me. So Linda and John go off to find Golden Glider by going to the Golden Snowball because they've seen that somebody's been going in and out of the building, it's still been paying its rent. So they come to the conclusion that Golden Glider is still there, and she's known to have worked with Chilblain in the past, so they assume that they are in a partnership. As they're leaving, they receive a call from Max that they miss, and Max is asking where Iris is because she's gone missing. So Wally explores the city by himself in the 64th century, and he realizes that everyone is trying to be fast to the point where they just, if they get bored of anything, they give up and they move on to something else. So they've built that tower in order to connect to the Speed Force in hopes that it can make them live even faster. And if that happens, then then Earth is probably going to come to an end because they don't even have, they have half of a constitution. They never finish anything, so, that just spells disaster. So Wally wants to change things. He's going to head back home, but before he does that, he asks Keely to show him the records of everything that they have. So he takes Wally to this big library. They got records of everything about Wally and everything about history. And so Wally grabs a bunch of books and he's like, this is all the important stuff that you need to know in order to make a functioning society. So I want you to take all this stuff and read it and learn everything that you can. Because you can't use me as your information because I failed civics. So I can't be your leader. So he gives all these books to Keely, expecting Keely to learn and read everything. And then they head to the tower, and Wally is like, I'm leaving, and I'm giving leadership of the city to Keeley. He will lead you to a better future, I hope. I'm off. See ya. I'm going back to my time. And he heads back to the past, or the present, I guess, using the speed tower, and he hopes that Keeley is going to be a suitable leader. Now, this feels like they're building it up to the fact that, like, he won't be a suitable leader, and this is going to set up another arc in the future. Probably. But maybe not. Maybe this is the happy ending that the 64th century will get. Like, only time will tell. We'll probably find out. So, Wally travels up the speed tower and destroys it as he does so, severing this city's ties to the Speed Force. And meanwhile, Linda and John break into Golden Snowball Recoveries. Linda didn't want to break in forcefully, but John just broke his way through. She's like, you know that Golden Glider and Chillblaine are going to search for the noise. And when they go in, Linda finds Golden Glider's, like, notes on a desk. And then she sees Golden Glider behind her holding a gun. And she throws a desk lamp at Golden Glider. And Golden Glider smashes to pieces because she's frozen and brittle. And it's pretty grim. Like, she just smashes to pieces. There's, like, red ice to show that, like, it is her. And Linda's like, oh my god, like, she was standing there. I thought that she was trying to kill me. And John's like, no, she's already dead. Like, she was frozen brittle. Somebody did this to her. And Linda's just like, oh my god, like... And John's like, you're safe, alright? So Linda's scarred because she thinks she's just murdered somebody. And even if she hasn't murdered someone, she still shattered them to pieces. And so it's like, it turns out Golden Glider and Chillblaine aren't working together. And Chillblaine comes in and he locks the door behind him. And he shoots a bunch of ice at a nearby wall. And he says, and the ice spells out, try and stop me, I'm not a thief. I'm different. Welcome to the Ice Age. And it ends with a panel of Golden Glider's head, Lisa Snart's head, on the ground with that written behind it. It's pretty grotesque. And I'm curious to see where this Chillblaine plot is going and who this Chillblaine is. I guess we'll find out. Maybe this Chillblaine is like the brother of one of the Chillblaines that Golden Glider killed, and he's getting revenge for all of the Chillblaines. That would be a lot of fun if this is the Chillblaine that was like, I'm getting vengeance for all of the Chillblaines whose lives were ruined by Golden Glider and the Flash. But yeah, that's the end of that issue. And so the next issue we're going to be covering is issue 114. So let's find out what happens next. Is Wally going to end up in the present again? And yeah, what's going to happen when Linda finds out that Wally really is coming back and that John's been lying to her? Okay, so getting into Flash issue 114, Race Against Time Part 2. We are now in the 30th century because this is where Wally ends up next, because it turns out it's going to be a bit harder for him to get back from the 64th century to the present, and he's going to be pinballing through different time periods, and so now he's ended up in the 30th century. But the issue actually begins with Don and Dawn Allen, the kids of Barry and Iris. They're in a warehouse doing something that we don't really find out about. They pull a lever and they're like, go! And as they're running, Wally comes up behind them and is like, race ya! And because he makes them jump, they all crash into each other, and they realize who they're looking at. At first, first of all, they think that it's Barry Allen, but they're lying. Like, they mistake Wally for Barry, but they know who it is. And Wally's like, no, it's not Barry, it's me, Wally. And Wally notices right away that Don and Dawn, who are known as the Tornado Twins in the future, are kind of rude to him. And they kind of like they say to Wally like, we're not superheroes, because Wally just assumes that they're superheroes, and Wally and they're just like, we're not superheroes because we promised to stay out of danger ever since Dad died, because we're the only people that Iris has left besides her parents. Like, she still has her parents; they're still alive in the future. But yeah, they don't want Iris losing more family members. And they keep giving Wally the cold shoulder, and he's like, wow, okay. I didn't think that Barry's children would be such jerks. I don't know why I've been so jealous, because, as Wally has mentioned before, he's been pretty jealous of Don and Dawn, because he's been everything but the son of Barry Allen, but he's always kind of seen himself as Barry Allen's son. So he's jealous of his actual children. Meanwhile, John Fox is still looking after Linda, still looking for Chilblain. In the last issue, Chilblain killed Golden Glider, so they're working on trying to find where Chilblain is next. And Jay is like to John, he's like, John, I know you're from the future, but Linda still won't believe you that Wally is actually dead. And John is like, well, she does believe me. And Jay is like, well, then you better look after her, because she's going to be in some dark times if what you say is true. You know, so Linda's coffee has gone cold, so John goes over and he heats it up for her. And they decide to go looking for where Chilblain is said to be next. And John asks Linda if she's learnt anything about Iris's disappearance and where she could possibly be at the moment. And she says no, but we get to see Iris. And we find out that she's being kept hostage. She doesn't really say anything. It's just her sitting at a desk, writing stuff. And then we see Dr. Polaris, who, as you know, was in Underworld Unleashed. He's out of the Soldier. How did he get out of the Soldier? I don't know. Because he appeared in Green Lantern as well, and they didn't explain it over there. And now he's in here, and they haven't explained it here. Maybe they will explain it. Maybe it will be explained after. But Dr. Polaris has Iris for some reason. We don't know what the reason is, but he has her. And he has a vendetta against Chilblain for some reason. The only thing we know is that Chilblain... If they find Chilblain, like if Linda and John find Chilblain, it'll be traced back to Dr. Polaris. And he can't have that. And so he wants to kill Chilblain. Why? Like, what has Chilblain done? We don't know. We'll find out, I guess. So it seems like Dr. Polaris is going to come into... There's going to be a confrontation between Dr. Polaris and Chilblain at some point in the future, which is interesting. Green Lantern villain and the Flash villain facing one another. That's never happened before, I don't think. Actually, no, there was the Guerrilla Warfare one, which ended up with Gorilla Grodd turning against Hector Hammond, so, yeah. While Wally is hanging out with Don and Dawn in the future, he discovers that the 30th century is still full of racist people. And they all hate aliens in the future, and Wally's like, man, it really sucks to know that racism still exists in the future. He's like, hey, why aren't you doing anything? And Don are like, because we think that Iris doesn't want us to do anything, so we just don't do anything, because we don't want to put ourselves in danger, because we don't want Mum to lose us. And Wally's like, well, you know, you're both lazy, like, I'll show you what you have to do. You know, you gotta do something. Watch this. And so Wally runs up to this Kaluan that is currently being held hostage by this J. Jonah Jameson looking guy, by these racists, which is ironic because J. Jonah Jameson isn't racist. Yeah, he kind of looks like J. Jonah Jameson. Yeah, he's holding this Kaluan guy hostage in chain, like in handcuffs, and so Wally decides to run up and free the guy by breaking the handcuffs. But it takes him a little bit longer to break them than he thought because they're stronger in the 30th century. And so somebody has the opportunity to come up behind Wally and smack him in the head, and then everyone's like, beat up the guy because he's stopping us from being racist. And so they all come up and they start beating him up. And that's when, like, Wally is being strangled by J. Jonah Jameson, and Don and Dawn, like, Dawn is like, what do we do, Dawn? And Don is like, we'll do what Iris told us. Let's go. And so it looks like they're leaving Wally to be killed by these people, but they're not. They're not deserting Wally. The Kaluan gets branded by these guys, and they go to brand Wally, and then a bunch of gust of wind comes in, and Don and Dawn come in enveloped in tornadoes, which is why they're called the Tornado Twins, because they spin so fast that nobody can see them. Because obviously they don't have they still have secret identities. They're not superheroes. They're just wearing their regular clothes and stuff, which Wally mistakes for costumes, but that's just the fashion of the future. So they come in tornadoes, and they get all the racists, like, they blow all the racists away, and they all run away. And Wally's like, wow, you came back, you saved me. And Don and Dawn reveal that, like, they want to be, like, they were taught to be heroic by their parents, but the reason they were so cold to Wally, like, they know who Wally is. They admit that they know who he is because he's famous. He was Kid Flash. They know him. Of course they know him. The reason why they gave him the cold shoulder was because they were jealous of him. Which is really funny because Wally was always jealous of them, and they're jealous of him because he was always so close to Barry, and they never really knew their father because he died before they were born. So the three of them make up, and they all become, they all become friends. Or I guess Wally is kind of like I guess he's an uncle to them, right? Because, or like he's like a second cousin to them, I guess. I don't know how that works, because he's the nephew of Iris, so he would be like their second cousin. He because they all get along now, he convinces Don and Dawn to help give their speed to him so that he can use their speed to launch himself back into the Speed Force so that he can continue traveling through time. But what he doesn't tell them is that he is actually getting weaker as he travels through time. Each century he hits, he gets weaker and weaker. He gets weaker and weaker. And he doesn't know why. Like, and that's why he keeps, like, he not only is he getting weaker, but he keeps falling short of the time that he's trying to get to, and he doesn't know why. And so John and Linda, meanwhile, are heading to a local aquarium where Chilblain is said to have attacked. And when they go in there, the whole place is frozen. John starts slipping on the ice, and he and Linda almost collide into a bunch of icicles, but John manages to stop himself. So they continue onward, and John mentions that Linda's been pretty cold lately, and that's when Linda kind of blows a fuse and is like, why, like, are you saying I'm grouchy? Well, yes, because, like, Wally lied to me in the past. The last time I thought he died, it was because he lied to me about, like he knew what was going to happen to him in the future, and he knew that I was going to die in the future, and he didn't tell me. And so now I'm wondering if this is also just another lie where he knew he was going to die and he didn't tell me. And John comforts her and gives her, like, a little blanket to keep her warm. And that's when John falls through the ice below. It cracks underneath him. He falls through, and he falls into an aquarium full of sharks, and Chilblain is there. He's like, hey, you were looking for me? And to be continued. So that's where issue 114 ends. So we'll find out what happens to John, and will Wally get back in time to help stop Chilblain, because it's very clear that they're probably going to need his help. We'll find out in the next issue. issue 115 of The Flash. This one actually dives even further into this. Well, we've got a love triangle between Linda Park, Wally West, and John Fox. I really like the relationship between Linda Park and Wally West, but I have noticed that it is a reoccurring thing that they have a lot of relationship problems, and it just keeps going, and this is building onto it. And so I'm really hoping that, like, after this, we take a bit of a break from the drama. I know drama, makes people read comic books, but I think they need a break. Like, they need a moment to actually just be a happy couple, because they haven't really had an opportunity to do that. So Wally ends up in the 27th century, which is the future where John Fox comes from. He's the Flash, but for some reason, a reason that we will find out later, he doesn't really get to be a hero. He's just forced to be a guard of the Time Institute. And it turns out that he has Wally locked up in a cell, and it's because he's kind of questioning Wally on, like, who he is and where he's from. And Wally's like, I came from the 20th century. And John is like, oh, so if you came from the 20th century, you would know of the Great Disaster. And Wally's like, what great disaster are you talking about? And John's like, you don't know about it? Oh, that's weird. Can you tell me, like, what happened, how you ended up here? And Wally explains everything that happened in Dead Heat, how he ended up in this future. And John mentions how he's been toying with the idea of going back to the 20th century as well, because Wally's been talking about how he wants to go back to the 20th century. Why does John want to go back to the 20th century? We'll find out. Meanwhile, back in the 20th century, Chilblain is laughing over the fact that John is going to be eaten by sharks. He's like, they're going to be the fastest bait alive. And then he gets smacked around the head by Linda, and she grabs a gun on the ground, like an ice gun, and she freezes the tank that John is trapped in, causing it to crack open and freeing him. And John actually cares more about the sharks. He's like, the sharks are gonna die, and Linda's like, we can look after them after we make sure that you're okay. And then they realize that Chilblain has gone, and they're like, oh, where's Chilblain? Where did he go? And then they see that Chilblain has been... We don't exactly see what happened, but it's assumed that, like... So his body is on the wall, and there's blood everywhere. And he's got a huge chunk of... Like, there's a silhouette of a chunk of a metal statue, like, on half of him. So it's assumed that he's just been smushed into the wall by a giant chunk of metal. And the freeze gun that Linda is holding attaches to the metal. Like, it jumps out of her hand and attaches to the metal, and they realize that magnetism was behind this. And it turns out that Dr. Polaris went there without us even knowing. Like, off panel, he killed Chilblain. He smushed him to a wall with metal, which is kind of disappointing because it seemed like they were setting up Chilblain to be, like, more than the previous Chilblains, but this Chilblain just ended up being another nameless dude who dies, which I guess is kind of funny as well, because Mark Waid is just like, you thought this Chilblain was going to actually be important? No, like, he's dead. So Polaris goes back to this mysterious dude that is with him, and the dude is floating in the air, so I'm kind of like, even though he's a silhouette, I'm kind of like, it's probably Abracadabra, because he's floating in the air. And Mark Waid loves Abracadabra, and this mysterious silhouetted person really cares about what happens in the future, just like Abracadabra, because he came from the future. What I mean by that is because we find out the reason that they've kidnapped Iris is because she knows everything about the future, so they're forcing her to write everything down so they can cheat the future about every death, about every event, which means that they probably know about Genesis and Infinite Crisis and Flashpoint and all that stuff. Canonically, that would be stuff that she'd be writing down. She'd be like, oh, at some point in the future, Reverse Flash is going to kill Barry's mom and then, like, create this whole timeline, like, like he's gonna kill Barry's mom, and then Barry's gonna save her and create this whole timeline, and it's gonna be a big event. But yeah, she swears at Polaris. She's just like, I hate the fact that you're forcing me to do all this. I refuse to help you. Like, you know, when are you gonna let me go? And he just shuts the door on her, and Dr. Polaris is like, are you sure this is right? Like, are you sure this plan is going to work? You say that if we use Chillblain's technology, this will lead to our victory. And Abracadabra is like, of course I believe that. It's going to happen. It'll all come true because it's exactly what it says on page 372 of the life story of the Flash, written by Iris Allen. He says that on that page, that we will use Chillblain's technology to take over the world. So it turns out that so John and Linda have gone back to Linda's house, and Linda is continuing to lose hope in Wally and him coming back, and John is cozying up to her and connecting more with her, and we find out that this is actually affecting Wally. So the reason why Wally has been losing control over his ability to travel through the Speed Force is because he's losing his connection with Linda. Linda is his literal rod to the present, his connection with her. And as she starts to move on from him, he starts to forget her, and it starts to affect his abilities, and that's why he's struggling to get back to the present. It's gotten to the point where he's forgotten her name. He's like, she's everything in the world to me, and I can't remember her name. And he's like smashing this like glass desk. Like, I can't even remember her name. He's like crying and shaking, and then his Speed Force lightning is kind of going out of control. And Wally's like, tell me about you. Tell me where the Flash dynasty extends to the 27th century. Struck by lightning, were you? That's when Don explains his origin, about how like he used tachyons and radiation in order to get his powers, and that he did become the Flash. But now the city is protected by these robotic guards called Speed Metal, and because they stop all the crimes, he has no reason to be the Flash, and so he's just a guard. And that's when Kronos shows up, the Atom villain, the villain who jumps around time and stuff, and has time stopping powers, and that he shows up. And John says that this is normal. Kronos has been showing up a lot lately. He's been jumping around grabbing time technology, and Kronos is like, I'm using the time technology to be a criminal. And so Wally and John team up to take down Kronos, and that's when Speed Metal shows up and is like, you don't need to do anything, Flash. We're Speed Metal, so we'll stop Kronos. So these two robots start chasing after Kronos. And John tries to like get in their way in order to help take down Kronos while still make it look like Speed Metal is doing it. So he throws a special Sands of Time hourglass at them, which adds motion to things. Like the sand inside adds motion to objects. So when he throws it at the Speed Metal robot, sand gets all over it, and it causes the Speed Metal robots to speed up even faster, whizzing around the room, and they whiz around so fast and out of control that they actually destroy the technology in Kronos' suit so that he can't time travel away. And or like he does, but like it causes his time travel to go out of control, so he gets sucked into a wormhole away from where he currently is to who knows where. So they've managed to stop him. And John walks up to Wally and he's like, I know who you're talking about. I know her name. Hopefully this will stop you from, whizzing out. But her name is in the history books. Her name is Linda Park. And so Wally is able to remember her name. And he decides that he's going to try again. He's going to head back to the present. So he runs into the Speed Force in order to go to Linda. And, because he's like, you mentioned about this event that's going to be happening in the 20th century, so I got to go back and see if I can help stop it. if that's what's going to happen. And because John Fox knows that this cataclysm is going to happen, he decides to go back to the 20th century as well. And that's why he's going back to the 20th century. Because he wants to save the world from this event. And so we find John Fox in the 20th century with Linda, the present John Fox, explaining to her what this event is that's going to happen. And he explains to her that an ice age is coming, and it's going to start in Central City, and it's going to take over the entire world. And he's there in order to stop it. And he's going to protect her now that Wally's not here. He's like, you're someone I can trust with everything. You know, Wally couldn't trust you with things, but just know that I trust you with everything, and I will tell you everything. And as they get closer, Wally realizes that his powers start, like, whizzing out in the Speed Force, and John and Linda go in to kiss each other, and they kiss one another, and as they kiss, Wally is like, the Speed Force, it's pulling me in, but Linda, and he, like, screams out for her, and then he gets, like, pulled into the Speed Force and disappears in a blitz of lightning, and we're left on a cliffhanger. That's where issue 115 ends, so we're going to find out what happens next. Is Wally going to be able to escape the Speed Force? What's going to happen between John and Linda? Is Linda going to find out what John's been doing behind the scenes? Lying to her? We'll find out. Alright, issue 116 of The Flash. This is a John Fox issue. Wally does not appear in this at all. It's very clear that Mark Waid is setting actual stakes where it's like, Wally's gone, and we don't know what's happened to him yet. Because the only time that he is mentioned in this issue is when Linda is giving us a rundown of what's happened. But the story begins with Linda and John kissing each other, which is what happened at the end of the issue. Because, you know, John's a bit of a dick. You know, he's trying to scoot in on Linda and Wally's relationship, and Linda quickly, like, breaks up their kiss. And is like, you said history recorded a great disaster and it's on the horizon. Give me the story, you know, who, what, when, where, why. And John kind of goes through the situation and says, like, you know, the Ice Age is coming, it's going to take over the world. And it starts, it's supposed to start, and then as he's saying that, ice starts appearing around them on the dam. And John's like, uh-oh, alright, let's get away from that so we don't freeze. And he quickly switches around and gets on top of the dam. And the entire dam freezes and then smashes open. And then starts making its way towards Midtown. So Linda is like, John, you gotta go and save people. I'm gonna call the station. So John goes off to Midtown in order to save people. And Linda goes to call the station, and the phone is pulled out of her hand. And she's like, whoa, what did that? Like, something pulled the phone out of my hand, or someone. And we know who it is. We know that it's Dr. Polaris, with a mysterious assailant. Which is funny, because the person he's working with doesn't have any kind of grand reveal, even though he's been silhouetted this whole time. It's like Mark Waid knew that, like, the reader would just know who it is, because it's pretty obvious who it is. So John runs into Midtown, and he sees the ice taking over the city, and as he's running through, he's too busy thinking about Linda and not thinking about saving people. So a building starts crumbling, and he's like, John, get your head in the game, you gotta save people, quick. And so he runs in, and he stops a bunch of people from being killed by debris. And then he sees the ice continuing to crawl its way forward. And he's like, how am I supposed to stop ice? So he sees a couple of gasoline trucks. And he quickly runs up to them, takes them, like, throws the driver out of them, takes them, and kicks the trucks, like, pushes them into the ice, causing them to explode and creating a wall of fire that he hopes will keep the ice at bay for a while. Meanwhile, Linda finds an abandoned ice house, which she sees the phone, because when the phone flew out of her hand, it flew towards the ice house because she followed it, and so it brought her there, where she finds Polaris and Abracadabra controlling the ice machine, and they're talking about the fact that they're going to take over the world. They've started working with each other ever since they teamed up in Underworld Unleashed. If you want to see that, go watch that video. But yeah, the idea is that they're going to freeze over the entire world and then control it, and hopefully be able to stop the machine before it freezes them. And Linda watches from a distance and puts two and two together when she sees that Abracadabra has Iris's book. So she figures out that they know the future by using Iris's book. A couple of cops show up in order to investigate, and Abracadabra sets the machine so that it will freeze anyone within their radius outside the building. So the two cops just get frozen instantly as soon as they get out of their car. So John continues saving people, and he realizes that the city is becoming more and more frozen faster. And he's like, no, this isn't supposed to happen. It's not supposed to be happening this fast. I'm supposed to save it. That's why I came back. I was supposed to stop it from getting this far. He's like, Linda, I gotta go after her because she's probably in danger. And he runs to the warehouse where Linda is, and he sees the two frozen cops, and he goes to help them, but he's running so fast that he causes a bunch of vibrations, and the two frozen cops just shatter into pieces and die, killing them. And John's just like, no, I wanted to save them. I deserve to be a hero. What's happening? So he's starting to get a little bit big-headed of he's doing this for the wrong reasons. It seems he's only doing this because he wants to be a hero. He's not doing it because he has an obligation to save people. He's also just doing it for Linda as well. So he runs into the warehouse and he punches Polaris, but Polaris and Abracadabra fight back and pretty much beat the crap out of him because they knew he was coming, because they have the book that tells them the future. So John gets knocked out, and Polaris and Abracadabra make their escape in order to go build more machines to freeze more of the world, and to freeze more cities and stuff. Linda walks over to John. John tries to break through the machine, but it's got a magnetic field around it, so he can't do it. And he grabs Linda and he's like, Linda, listen to me. I can't let it get too late before I tell you how I feel about... And Linda's like, oh my god, John, that's enough. And John's just like, what, you kissed me? And Linda's like, no, you kissed me. You don't understand, I'm in love with Wally, not you. I don't feel about you in that way, and all you've been doing is, you're trying to console me about Wally lying, but the truth is that you've lied to me too, because originally you said you only came here for a 10-minute visit, but then you just happened to come up with this story of oh, you're actually here to stop this cataclysmic event. You're just as bad as he is. The only difference is I'm not actually in love with you, I may feel a certain way about Wally time to time, but in the end, I still love him, and I'm still hoping that he comes back. And all you did was try to steal him, try to steal me from him. And she's like, once upon a time, I fell for a boy with lightning in his eyes. You tried to make me forget that. Instead, you made me remember. He's like, no, Linda, I love him, John, with all my heart. And I always... And then a big cracoom happens, and John's like, Linda? And he goes outside, and Linda is frozen solid. And it ends on that cliffhanger of John seeing frozen Linda and just being like, Linda! And that's where issue 116 ends. So, oh boy, what's going to happen next? We'll find out in issue 117, where hopefully Wally will make his way back to the present and save Linda, and maybe John will change his ways and actually be a hero for the right reasons, and not try to steal people's partners and stuff. Who knows? All right, issue 117 with some new artists. We got Jim Chung and John Nyberg, written by Mark Waid still, obviously. So at the end of the last issue, Linda was frozen solid. And at that very moment, right after that in this issue, Wally arrives in the present where John and Linda's frozen body are. So when he arrives, he sees Linda's frozen body and is just like, Linda! He's obviously really pissed. He's really pissed off at John. He's like, you did this to her. Like, even though I was in the Speed Force, I knew everything that was going on. I knew you were lying to Linda about me. And John's like, I didn't lie at all. And Wally's like, yeah, you're right. You just didn't tell the truth, which is just as bad and is what got us in this situation to begin with. So Wally figures that, like, he knows Linda is still alive because she was able to bring him back to the present because their hearts are tethered. And so he heads off and he tells John to just look after Linda and just not touch her or anything. He heads off to Piper off panel where Piper gives him this machine to put on Linda that will stop any vibrations from, like, breaking her, so that they can carry her to Star Labs so that hopefully the scientists at Star Labs can help her feel better. They actually get to Star Labs, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to be what's her name? Why am I blanking on her name? We haven't seen her in a long time. I'm stumbling on her name, but you probably know who I'm talking about. The doctor that Wally knew and, like, had a bit of a relationship with earlier on in his issues. I assume it's her. Tina McGee. I'm assuming this is Tina McGee. They don't say her name, but she works at Star Labs and, she's got the same hair color and stuff, so I'm assuming that this is supposed to be Tina. So Tina looks up. I'm just going to say headcanon, this is Tina. Tina looks after Linda's frozen body while Wally and John decide to track down Dr. Polaris and Abracadabra. So they find the, like, magnet machine, like the Ice Age machine, and then Wally uses a device that tracks magnetism because Dr. Polaris' magnetic powers are so powerful that he just radiates it at all times. So he's able to use this device to track down Polaris. How did he get this device? Piper gave it to him. They don't really explain, but we can just assume whenever Wally has some kind of device, Piper gave it to him. So they track down Polaris and Abracadabra's base, and Wally finds Iris, and he's like, oh my god, Iris, like, what have they been doing to you? And Iris is like, they've been forcing me to write down everything in time. I haven't eaten, I haven't slept in days. And so Polaris and Abracadabra show up and are like, hey, I guess you figured out our plan. And Wally tells John to stay back and look after Iris while he goes to attack Dr. Polaris and Abracadabra. But they easily overwhelm him, and they just start taunting him and telling him their evil plan. They tell him everything, how they got the book. He's like, I found it in the river, like it washed up on the shore after you threw it off the bridge, and we've been using it to take over the world. The reason we're doing this Ice Age is so that, like, once the whole world is frozen over, except for me and Dr. Polaris, it'll be a new age. aka Abracadabra. Age. And so Wally drops to his knees and he's like, alright, go ahead, like, do whatever you want, just promise me that you'll give me Linda. That's all I want. That's all I care about. I just want Linda. Alright, I just want her to be okay. And Abra's just like, look at him, groveling at our feet, just as we said he would. And he's like, tell me, what do you call that? And Wally's like, misdirection. And John Fox takes the opportunity to punch Abracadabra in the face, which allows Wally to get up and fight Dr. Polaris. And Dr. Polaris is about to use his powers. He's like, "What, you arrogant fools! Prepare!" And like Wally grabs Dr. Polaris as he's talking, and before Dr. Polaris can even finish his sentence, which is "prepare to die," Wally brings him to the Ice Age machine, and Polaris uses his powers and destroys the Ice Age machine by accident because he was in the middle of using his powers. So he destroys the Ice Age machine, and then Wally knocks Polaris out and then grabs him, and John is like, the glacier is still, like, the iceberg is still in the city, making its way through after the dam broke open, so we still gotta go stop that. And Wally's like, why didn't you tell me about that to begin with? You never told me there was a glacier. So they quickly run to the city, they find the glacier, and Wally forces Dr. Polaris to use his powers to turn the ice back into water, because there's like there's like iron in the water, I guess, and flow the water through the city safely so that they can get it out of the city. And he's like, if you don't do that, I'll leave you here to be killed by this giant glacier. And you know I will, because of what you've done to Linda. Like, you've taken away from me. And so Polaris begrudgingly helps Wally and clears the city of the water. Like, he uses his powers to get the water out of the city, and then which leaves him incredibly tired. And Wally's like, hey, since you're so tired, I can hand you over to the authorities. And Polaris is like, let go of me! Ah! And he flies away to go and do... He flies away to go appear in a Green Lantern issue, because I'm pretty sure there is a Green Lantern issue I've read that he's in, and I think it takes place after this. And then... So Wally's like, he went with his tails between his legs. Check the flight pattern. He's wasted and no threat for the moment. But I'm not happy about it. But we did bust Abracadabra. And then he turns to John. He's like, John, nobody's perfect. And so they head back to Star Labs, and they find that Linda is still frozen. And Tina is like, look, we've done everything that we can. But we can't be certain that she's going to live through this, because she's still frozen. But we're going to do whatever we can. And Wally just looks at John with a piercing look, and then he kneels beside Linda's bed and her frozen body, and just like rests his head on her. And John watches from a distance, and he's like, I'll never run away from the blame, but I'll make good. I owe them both. Somehow I'll find a way to set this right. And then Speed Metal shows up in the present. They've arrived to take down the fugitive John Fox. So obviously, because he's from the future, they've come back in time to catch him, because traveling through time is often a law. It is against the law in the future. If you travel through time, you're instantly a criminal. I'm pretty sure that's what happened with Eobard Thawne, is that one of the reasons he's a criminal in the future is because he used time travel, which is against the law. And yeah, that's where the issue ends. And so next we're going to be covering the final issue of this week. We're going to be doing Annual 9 after this, but this is the final numbered issue. And the end of this arc. Issue 118, Back from the Future. Alright, Flash issue 118, written by Mark Waid, and Brian Augustine is writing alongside him. He was the previous editor for The Flash. With art by Sergio Cariello and Brian Garvey, some new guest artists. I don't know if they're going to be sticking around. DC has a habit of saying, like, oh, they're a guest, but then they are just, like, the main artist right after that. So Linda's frozen, she's at Star Labs. It was Tina McGee. In this issue, we get a confirmation that this is Tina and Jerry McGee that are helping to look over Linda's situation and make sure that she stays alive. They can't thaw her out because they'll be at risk of killing her. The best they can do is try and keep her stable and just make sure she doesn't die. And Wally is obviously pissed off at this. He's like, you can't save her? Like, seriously? And Tina's just like, calm down, Wally. Like, we're gonna do everything we can. We don't want her to die, but right now you're just going to have to sit back and let us do our work and hope that things end up okay. So the speed metal robots have arrived and they're looking for John. So they're speeding throughout the city searching for him. Meanwhile, Wally, Piper, and John are walking through the city, and Wally and John start arguing with one another, and John's just like, "That's enough, West. I know my sins better than anyone. I put a wonderful woman at risk because I misunderstood our relationship, and if you were around, maybe none of this would have happened. I don't know, but maybe that's the point, Wally. You aren't around very often, are you? You spend an awful lot of time hopping all over creation without telling the woman you love what's going on. If you were more upfront with Linda, I wouldn't have gotten anywhere with her." He's like, "You lousy. Alright, West, let's settle this." Piper's like, guys, calm down. Wally goes to punch John, and he's like, oh, he's gonna run away like a coward. But it turns out that Speed Metal has grabbed John, and they're going to kill him. They're not just gonna take him back to their time because he's broken the law. They're gonna kill him, like they're gonna execute him right now. And John's like, no! And he breaks out and runs off. And Speed Metal chases after him, and Piper is like, I know you hate John, but you can't let him die. You gotta go after him. And Wally's like, yeah, alright, I'm going. So John is being chased by Speed Metal, and Wally catches up with him and decides to start helping him fight Speed Metal. He tries to vibrate through them to make them explode, because Wally can do that. Whenever he vibrates through something, it explodes. But he just ends up smashing straight into them, and John is like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have done that before I could tell you that Speed Metal, like, they're too dense. You can't vibrate through them. You know, their job is to chase after people at super speed. If they're going after a speedster, of course they're going to have protection from speedsters vibrating through them. So they decide to continue running away from Speed Metal and think about a way to stop these robots. Meanwhile, Iris goes and visits Linda and tells Linda that she's not going back to the future because she still wants to kind of help change the past whenever she needs to, but she also can't stay where she is. She needs to go and hide again, this time somewhere where someone like Abracadabra won't be able to find her. So she caresses Linda's frozen cheek. It's like, take care of Wally, please. Goodbye. So Wally and John make it to the middle of a Dragon Ball arena, basically the place where Vegeta and Goku fought each other. And Wally destroys a giant mountain, just destroys a whole mountain that's probably been there for thousands of years. He just destroys the whole thing and causes it to collapse on the robots, but they just break their way out. And so John tries to use he blows dust in the Speed Metal's face to give Wally and him a moment to be able to get away from them. And Wally points at another giant mountain and is like, hey, look at that. I've got a plan. You can vibrate through things, right, John? And John's like, yep, I can do it without blowing things up. And Wally's like, great, that's going to work perfectly for the plan. You vibrate through there and I'll see you on the other side. So John vibrates through the giant mountain, and one of the Speed Metal robots vibrates in through with him, and Wally is like, you might be too dense at your regular speed, for me to vibrate through you, but while you're vibrating through something and you're not completely solid, then I can vibrate through you. So he vibrates through the Speed Metal robot and destroys it, and John's like, don't celebrate too soon, there's two more, and they're not going to fall for the same trick. So they continue running, and John's like, why don't I just give myself up to the robot? I deserve to die. And Wally's like, hey, don't give me that sap story. You're not going to have a heroic sacrifice. You don't have to do that. So Wally reveals to John that he can share his speed with things. So he comes up with an idea to share his speed with the Speed Metal robots so that they can then cause the robots to collide into one another, and hopefully that will destroy them. So they do exactly that. Wally gives his speeds to the Speed Metal robots and then moves out of the way, and because it's running so fast, it can't stop in time, and John ducks as the other Speed Metal robot comes up from behind him, and the two robots collide with one another and explode, destroying each other. And then John is like, since you can share your speed with people, I have a bit of an idea. So they head back to the lab and they come to the conclusion that Wally could share his speed with Linda's molecules in order to thaw her out. Because Tina is like, the reason this might work is because being frozen is just when your molecules are slowed down. So if you speed up her molecules enough, you'll be able to thaw her out. But there's a risk to it. Like, you might accidentally kill her, but this is the only thing we got. And Wally's like, of course, I'll give it a shot. I'll give anything a try. So he walks up to Linda and he shares his speed with her, and it works. He thaws her out. She melts, like the ice melts off of her. He's like, it's working! You're alive! And then Linda ends up in hospital because she's just been frozen for like 3 days in a row, so she's probably got frostbite and stuff. So, John comes in to see her, and Wally's just like, despite everything you've done, John, you ended up helping save Linda. Like, it was your idea that helped save her. So, I owe everything to you. And John's just like, I'm sorry for everything I did to you, Linda, everything I put you through. I'm going to be working on, like, hopefully the three of us can get along from now on. And then John says that, like, he's not going to head back to the future because Speed Metal are going to be there. So they'll just grab him. So he's just going to have to find somewhere else to go. But he can't stay in the present either because they know that he's here. So he's going to go somewhere else in time and just... Like, I feel like he's going to be a character who just kind of... Like, he constantly travels through time and just lives in different time periods on the run. Like a fugitive Flash. So John says goodbye to Linda and Wally and heads off to who knows where. Who knows if we're going to see him again? Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. I guess we'll find out in the future. And then Linda says, she's like, Wally, there's a lot I need to explain. And Wally's like, yeah, me too. But later. And they just hug each other, and that's where the issue ends. It ends with a nice moment between Wally and Linda, just being happy that they've reunited. And that's where the issue ends. And that is the end of Race Against Time. But this week's episode isn't over yet because we've got one more Flash story to read, and that is Flash Annual 9, which is I think it's an Elseworlds story. So I'm just opening it up because I want to see what the story is. Yeah, so Flash Annual 9 is a part of, like, this event called Legends of the Dead Earth, where all the annuals did these alternate stories. It was like an alternate future where, like, the heroes were all dead or all gone, and somebody else takes the role of whatever hero that is. So in the Flash Annual, there's going to be another character who becomes the Flash in an alternate future. So let's check out this story and see what's up. It's called Silent Running. It's written by Peter J. Tomasi, who is most known for Superman run. He wrote Nightwing. I think he wrote some. He wrote Green Lantern Corps, right? Yeah, he wrote Green Lantern Corps, and he's also written Batman and Robin too. With art by J.H. Williams III and Mick Gray. So this annual is a weird one. I don't really like it. It's just not what I'm interested in when it comes to... Like, basically, Peter J. Tomasi is trying to take the Flash and do something interesting with it. And he does, but it's not something that I'm interested in that's Flash-related. Especially because nobody shows it... Like, there's no speed powers in this annual for most of the story. Most of the story is about the symbolism of the Flash. So basically, in this annual, it takes place in an alternate future where everything is gone. All the heroes are gone. A meteor shower happened at some point, and now the world is just a frozen wasteland. and there aren't a lot of people left living, but there's a society of people that all worship the Flash, and they worship the Flash because John Johns, who they call the green-skinned man, came down to them with the book, what they call the Book of Iris, and it's Iris's book that she wrote, and gave it to them, and so they learned everything about the Flash, and they started worshipping him. And every now and then, a group of them go out on this thing that they call the pilgrimage, led by this man named Stephen Mallory this time, and their goal is to go to the lightning and be imbued with its powers. So we begin with the group led by Stephen, and they get zapped by the lightning, and it's assumed they all die except for Stephen, because he's the only one that comes back. He finds his son Brian Mallory, and Stephen has aged rapidly, so now he's got like long white hair. And Brian's just like, "Father, what happened to you? You're really old." And then we meet Brian's brother, whose name is Tristan, and Tristan's the villain of the story. You know, it's good brother, bad brother. Tristan wants the power of the lightning to himself, and he wants to just rule everything. He's just one of those guys, just evil tyrants. And it's ironic because, like, Tristan looks a lot like Barry, and then Brian just doesn't look like anyone. Like, Brian's just got long black hair. So Brian shows up with their father, and because Tristan is saying to everyone that Stephen is dead, but then he finds out his dad is alive, and he's upset at that because he wants the power that his dad is going to pass on. So he's kind of annoyed that his dad is still alive. And so Stephen passes the power on to, like, he gives Brian his blessing and is like, the power of the lightning is going to be passed on to you. And Tristan is pretending to be asleep, and he hears this, and it upsets him. And so he goes and sees his dad while his dad is sleeping, and kills him in his sleep. But Brian doesn't know this. Brian just thinks that their dad died of old age, but Tristan kills him. And then he sculpts a lightning symbol into his chest and begins doing a ritual because he wants to get the power of the lightning. And so he and Brian decide to take their father's body to this like pit. So basically they create his tombstone, and then they dump his body into this giant hole, and that's like their ritual that they do. And then after that, they have to go on and do their own pilgrimage to where the lightning is as well, and one of them will get the power. So, oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, Stephen gave Brian this, like, pendant that is supposed to be, like, you know, whoever wears this gets the power. And Tristan wants it, and Brian's like, if you want it so much, then you can go get it. And he throws it into the pit, and Tristan's like, blasphemer! So they're both forced to go up to the lightning to try and get the power, and they don't know which one's going to get it because they don't have the pendant anymore. So they head up on the pilgrimage. They decide to stay in a nearby cave, and while they're in there, they get attacked by this weird monster thing. No explanation as to what it is. When it first showed up, I was like, is that supposed to be Martian Manhunter? Like, did he become this thing? But no, it's just some weird monster thing that Brian stabs in the stomach after the monster attacks his brother. And so Tristan and Brian run away from it. They jump off a cliff. The monster grabs the rope that they're holding onto when they jump off of the cliff, because they just grab onto a vine. And the monster grabs it and tries to pull them back up. And so they let go. And as they let go, the lightning strikes, which scares the monster away. And Tristan calls to his brother. He's like, hey, you know, my back. I can't move. I can't feel anything. Like, I can't feel my legs. And then the lightning strikes down and zaps both of them. And Brian is imbued with the power of the lightning and gains super speed. And Tristan is aged rapidly, because if you're punished by the lightning, you become really old. And he's going to continue getting older until he dies. And so he knocks out Brian and then hooks Brian up to this machine that sucks out his life to keep him alive. and so that he can continue ruling over their people. So he starts ruling over everyone as like this grand priest of lightning. Meanwhile, his brother Brian is trapped in this machine that he's sucking the energy out of to keep himself alive and living forever. And this woman that works for Tristan discovers what he's doing. I don't think she has a name, but she discovers what he's doing, and she decides to go and save Brian from the machine. So while Tristan is busy doing like his priest stuff, because he's now like a evil priest, this woman goes and finds Brian and decides to break him out of the machine, especially when Tristan starts taking babies on the pilgrimage and having them get zapped by lightning, which means some of them get the power and then some of them like just die of old age. So because he's killing babies now, she decides that they need to stop him. So she breaks Brian out of the glass, freeing him. And then Brian, like Tristan shows up and it's like, "What are you doing?" And Brian's just like, "We're stopping you." And he uses his speed power to knock Tristan and then like fight him and all of these like all of Tristan's like followers. Like Tristan sends all his followers to kill Brian, and Brian starts using his super speed and knocking them all out, and he grabs the woman that saved him and takes her away, and they jump into like a nearby hole, like into the ocean to get away, like into water. Specifically, like, we don't exactly know where it is. It's just a hole with water in it, and they jump into it to get away, and there's a bunch of dead bodies in the water, and it's assumed that these are all the people that Tristan has killed, keeping himself alive. Because what he does is he takes them on the pilgrimage, they get zapped by lightning, they get the powers, and then he sucks all their energy out and, you know, keeps living. So Ryan and this girl are about to die, and then somebody saves them. And it turns out that this man is John Johns in the future. And John, the last remaining superhero, has watched all of his friends die. And he gives Brian Wally West's old costume to wear. And so Brian becomes the new Flash. But he's got like long hair coming out of the mask and stuff. It's a pretty cool design. And then John flies away. It's like, "You are the new Flash. Goodbye. You will continue on his legacy." And so now that he is the Flash, Brian has been given a new sense of being a hero. And so he decides to go and stop his brother. And it turns out Tristan is really young now and is powerful because he's been sucking out people's age. He has this staff with a lightning bolt on it. So he shows up and he and Brian start fighting each other. And they just have a massive fight. And Brian grabs Tristan and brings him back to like the Flash church that they worship at. And then Tristan stabs Brian through the chest. And while he's stabbed in the chest, Brian grabs Tristan and brings him all the way to the pit where they dropped his dad's body, and then Tristan gets dropped into the pit and he dies. And then off panel, Brian is put back into the machine by this woman in order to keep him alive, and it turns out that Brian is continued to be used as a way for the society to continue prospering. So he just ends up in this machine forever. It's kind of a depressing ending. And this woman that still doesn't have a name talks about the tale of Tristan and Brian to all of these children, and his legacy lives on. But she doesn't tell them what happened to Brian, that he's stuck in this machine forever. And that's it. That's the story. I'm not really a fan of it because it's just depressing. I tend to go out of my way. Like, I tend to not go out of my way and read stories that are just depressing for the sake of it. Where, like, let's try something new, and in my opinion,
what it did wasn't interesting. It's just, you know, this could be any character. The fact that this is a Flash annual is like, it could be anything, you know, because the Flash's powers don't really, like, they're not really a part of this annual. They, like, Brian doesn't even use super speed until like towards the end of the story, and I'm just not interested at all in like Brian and Tristan's relationship, and you know, good brother versus evil brother, religious cults worshipping the Flash. Like, we already did that in a Mark Waid storyline, so we're basically just rehashing things that Mark Waid has already done, except it's, well, I guess even back then it was still set in the far future. The only difference is Wally isn't alive to witness it. But yeah, that's my opinion on Annual 9. It's probably skippable, unless you're doing what I'm doing, where you're reading everything. You can probably just skip this one. But that's it. That's this week's episode. And yeah, next week we're going to be covering Final Night, including the Flash tie-in. I'm not going to do all of Final Night because there's a lot of tie-ins for that, and they're not connected in any real way. But I will be doing the Flash one. Maybe I'll talk about the Green Lantern one. I don't know. I am going to be reading it, but like, I might not talk about it. It really just depends. If it's worth talking about, you know, because if I talk about that, then, you know, at that point it's like, why am I not just doing all the tie-ins? So, you know what, I'm just gonna say I'm not gonna do Green Lantern. I'll just do the Flash tie-in. I'll just keep it simple and just talk about the Flash one. But yeah, that's next week, Final Night, and then the week after that we're gonna be doing more Flash. I think we're gonna be doing there's a couple of like Flash crossovers and like one-off miniseries that we're gonna be doing, like Flash plus Nightwing and Flash Green Lantern Faster Friends, which are a couple of crossover stories that I'm not gonna really be able to fit in anywhere in between issues, so I thought I'd just do them as like their own episode. So that should be after Final Night. Anyway, that's going to be it, and I hope you liked this episode, and if you're watching on YouTube, then please subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you next week.